The stars looked different this far from Earth. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty and watched the distant suns through the main viewer. His ship had been traveling for 8 months in the Kepler sector, mapping new worlds and searching for signs of life. The Liberty was humanity's newest exploration vessel, built for long journeys into unknown space. She carried 2,000 crew members and the most advanced science equipment Earth could build. Morrison had been a space captain for 15 years. He had seen many strange things during his travels, but today felt different. His science officer, Commander Lisa Hayes, had been tracking unusual energy readings for the past 3 hours. The signals came from somewhere beyond the edge of their sensor range, moving toward them at incredible speed. "Captain, I'm getting clearer readings now," Hayes said from her station. Her voice carried a note of worry that Morrison had never heard before. "Multiple contacts, sir. Very large ships heading straight for us." Morrison moved to her console and looked at the data. The readings showed at least 50 massive objects approaching their position. Each one was 3 times larger than the Liberty. He had never seen ships of that size before, not even in Earth's biggest shipyards. "How long until they reach us?" Morrison asked. 20 minutes, sir," Hayes replied. "They're moving faster than anything we've ever recorded." Morrison activated the ship's communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. We have unknown contacts approaching our position. All crew to battle stations. This is not a drill." The Liberty's crew moved quickly to their emergency positions. Chief Engineer Ben Carter reported from the engine room that all systems were ready. The ship's small weapons came online, though. Morrison knew they were meant for clearing space debris, not fighting other ships. The alien fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel right in front of them. Morrison stared in shock at the massive ships that filled his viewer. They were dark and angular, covered in weapon ports that glowed with menacing energy. The largest ship was easily 10 times the size of the Liberty. A communication signal came, through on all frequencies. The alien voice was deep and harsh, speaking in perfect English. "Human vessel, this is Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian First Assault Fleet. You will surrender immediately or be destroyed." Morrison looked around, his bridge at his crew. They were scientists and explorers, not soldiers. But they were human, and humans did not surrender to threats. He activated the communication system and replied, "This is Captain Morrison of the UES Liberty. We are on a peaceful exploration mission. We have no quarrel with you." "Your response is irrelevant," the alien admiral said. "The Zephyrian Empire claims this sector. Your species will submit to our rule or be eliminated. We have conquered 17 star systems. Your primitive vessels cannot resist us." Morrison felt something cold settle in his stomach. These aliens were not here for peaceful contact. They were conquerors who had already destroyed other civilizations. He thought of Earth, of the colonies, of the billions of humans who had no idea this threat existed. "We decline," Morrison said simply. The alien admiral seemed surprised by the response. "You decline? Your ship is outnumbered 200 to 1. You have no weapons that can harm us. Surrender now and some of your crew may be spared as slaves." Morrison looked at his crew again. Commander Hayes nodded at him. Chief Carter's voice came over the intercom, saying the engines were ready for whatever was needed. The bridge crew stood at their stations waiting for orders. They were afraid, but they were not going to run. "I said we decline," Morrison repeated. "If you want our ship, you'll have to take it." What happened next lasted only 15 minutes, but Morrison would remember every second for the rest of his very short life. The Zephyrian ships opened fire with weapons that tore through the Liberty's shields like paper. The human ships small. Defensive systems were useless against the alien technology. Commander Hayes tried to coordinate their few weapons, but the alien ships moved with frightening precision. They targeted the Liberty's engines first, then her weapon systems, then her communication array. They were not trying to destroy the ship quickly. They wanted the humans to suffer. Chief Carter reported multiple hull breaches. Emergency force fields were failing throughout the ship. The artificial gravity flickered on and off, throwing crew members against bulkheads. Fires broke out on several decks as alien energy beams sliced through the ship's structure. Morrison ordered all non-essential crew to the escape pods, but the aliens destroyed each pod as it launched. They were not interested in prisoners. They wanted to send a message about what happened to species that defied the Zephyrian Empire. The bridge took a direct hit that killed half the crew instantly. Commander Hayes was thrown against her console, blood running from a head wound. She looked up at Morrison and said, "Sir, I can get one message out. The emergency transmitter is still working." Morrison nodded. He activated his captain's log and spoke quickly while alien weapons tore his ship apart around him. "This is Captain Morrison of the UES Liberty. We have encountered a hostile alien force calling itself the Zephyrian Empire. They have superior technology and numbers. They are not interested in peaceful contact. They want to conquer human space. Tell Earth they're coming. Tell them we fought. Tell them we did not surrender." The final alien barrage struck the Liberty's reactor core. Morrison saw the explosion racing toward the bridge and had time for one last thought. He hoped someone would receive his message. He hoped Earth would be ready. The Liberty exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Of the 2,000 crew members, only one survived. Lieutenant Alex Turner had been in an outer maintenance pod when the attack began. The explosion threw his small craft clear of the debris field. The alien ships detected his pod, but did not fire on it. Admiral Kethvar's voice came over Turner's communication system. "Survive, human. Return to your kind. Tell them what happens to those who defy the Zephyrian Empire. Tell them that resistance is futile." Turner watched the alien fleet jump to faster-than-light speed, leaving him alone with the wreckage of his ship and the bodies of his friends. He set course for the nearest human outpost, carrying news that would change everything. The aliens thought they had won a great victory. They thought they had sent a message that would terrify humanity into submission. They had no idea what they had actually done. They had just declared war on the most dangerous species in the galaxy, and humans had a very different response to aggression than any other race the Zephyrians had encountered. The aliens would learn this lesson, but it would cost them everything. They had built over centuries of conquest. The war had begun, and no army would survive the human response. Emperor Zelthok paced through his war chamber like a caged animal, his chitinous claws clicking against the polished stone floor. The reports from the Sol system lay scattered across his command table, each one more disturbing than the last. In 300 years of rule, he had never faced a military defeat of this magnitude. 480 ships gone, the pride of the Zephyrian Empire, eliminated by a species his intelligence services had dismissed as primitive. General Morthak, the Emperor's chief military advisor, stood silently beside the holographic display showing Zephyrian territory. Red markers indicated human attacks across 12 different systems. The pattern was clear and terrifying. Humanity was not content to defend itself. They were hunting Zephyrian forces throughout the galaxy with systematic precision. "How is this possible?" the Emperor demanded, his voice echoing off the chamber walls. "Our technology is superior. Our ships are larger. Our weapons are more powerful. How did they destroy Admiral Kethvar's fleet so easily?" General Morthak manipulated the holographic display, showing the tactical analysis from the surviving ships. "Your Majesty, the humans appear to have developed adaptive technology. Their weapons learn from each engagement, modifying their attack patterns to counter our defenses. Their shields absorb energy in ways our scientists cannot explain." The Emperor stopped pacing and stared at the display. The human fleet movements showed a level of coordination that seemed impossible. Every ship moved in perfect harmony with every other ship, as if they were controlled by a single mind. Their attacks were precisely timed, their formations flawless, their tactics ruthlessly efficient. "What about our other conquered territories?" the Emperor asked. "Are the subject species remaining loyal?" General Morthak's expression darkened further. "Several systems have declared independence, Your Majesty. The news of our defeat has spread rapidly. Species that submitted to us decades ago are now rebelling, believing that human protection will save them from retaliation." Captain Julie Martinez led her strike force through the outer edges of Zephyrian space, hunting military installations with the patience of an apex predator. Her squadron consisted of 12 ships, each one equipped with the latest human stealth technology and weapons systems. They moved through enemy territory like ghosts, appearing without warning to destroy targets before vanishing back into the darkness. Martinez stood on the bridge of the cruiser UES Retribution, studying the tactical display that showed their next target. The Zephyrian supply depot ahead contained enough weapons and ammunition to outfit 50 warships. More importantly, it served as a communication relay for enemy forces throughout this sector. "Captain, we're detecting minimal defenses," reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Paul Wright. 3 patrol ships and a handful of automated defense platforms. Standard Zephyrian technology, no adaptations for human weapons. Martinez nodded grimly. The Zephyrians were still fighting the last war, using tactics and equipment designed to intimidate species that had never developed advanced military technology. They had not yet adapted to face an enemy that had spent centuries perfecting the art of warfare. "All ships attack formation Beta," Martinez ordered. "I want that depot eliminated in under 10 minutes. No survivors, no escape pods, no distress signals." The human ships dropped their stealth fields simultaneously, appearing around the Zephyrian facility like materializing demons. The enemy patrol ships had time to fire exactly 3 shots before Martinez's weapons turned them into expanding debris clouds. The defense platforms managed to launch 2 missiles before adaptive human countermeasures eliminated them. The supply depot itself lasted less than 5 minutes. Human weapons sliced through its armor plating like it was made of paper, triggering secondary explosions that could be seen from neighboring star systems. Martinez watched the facility die through her main viewer, feeling the same cold satisfaction that had driven humanity since the Liberty's destruction. "Target eliminated, Captain," reported Wright. "No enemy survivors detected." Martinez activated her communication system and broadcast a message on all Zephyrian military frequencies. "This is Captain Martinez of the United Earth Navy. Your supply depot has been destroyed. Your patrol ships are gone. Tell your Emperor that humanity remembers the Liberty and we will never stop hunting you." 3,000 light-years away, Colonel Dan Murphy prepared for the most dangerous mission of his military career. Intelligence reports indicated that the Zephyrians were building a massive fortress on the moon of their home world, a facility designed to coordinate their remaining military forces. Murphy's job was to infiltrate the base and demonstrate that nowhere in Zephyrian space was safe from human retaliation. Murphy commanded a special forces team of 20 soldiers, each one equipped with powered armor and weapons that would have seemed like magic to previous generations of warriors. They approached the Zephyrian moon in a stealth transport, invisible to enemy sensors and silent as death itself. The fortress was impressive by alien standards, a sprawling complex of bunkers and weapon emplacements carved into the moon's surface. Automated defenses scanned space continuously, searching for approaching threats. The Zephyrians had learned enough from their defeats to expect human attacks, but they still did not understand what they were truly facing. Murphy and his team landed on the moon's far side and approached the fortress through underground tunnels that their orbital reconnaissance had mapped weeks earlier. The Zephyrians had built their defenses to repel attacks from space, not from enemies who crawled through the rock beneath their feet like insects. The assault began at midnight local, time when Murphy's demolition specialist, Sergeant Lisa Park, triggered charges that had been placed throughout the fortress's foundation. The explosions collapsed entire sections of the base, trapping hundreds of alien soldiers in rubble that had once been their impregnable stronghold. Murphy led his team through the chaos, their armor protecting them from the toxic atmosphere while their weapons eliminated any Zephyrian who attempted to mount a defense. The aliens fought bravely, but they were not equipped to face human soldiers who moved like shadows and struck with the precision of surgical instruments. The mission lasted 6 hours. When Murphy's team withdrew, the Zephyrian fortress was a smoking ruin that would never threaten anyone again. More importantly, they had captured the facility's central computer core, containing intelligence data that would help humanity track down every remaining enemy installation. Dr. Amanda Foster worked in a secure laboratory beneath the streets of New Geneva, studying the captured Zephyrian technology with the intensity of a scholar who held the key to victory in her hands. Foster led a team of xenobiologists and engineers who had been tasked with understanding how alien science worked and how humanity could counter it. The samples brought back from Murphy's raid revealed secrets that explained much about Zephyrian capabilities. Their technology was indeed advanced, but it had remained essentially unchanged for centuries. The aliens had achieved technological superiority over their previous enemies and then stopped innovating, believing they had reached the pinnacle of military science. "Doctor, look at this," called her research assistant Dr. Kevin Chen from across the laboratory. "The Zephyrian computer systems are incredibly sophisticated, but they're also completely static. No adaptive programming, no learning algorithms, no evolution in response to new threats." Foster examined the data with growing excitement. "That's why they can't counter our weapons. Their defensive systems are designed to handle known threats, but they can't adapt to something they've never seen before." She activated her communication link to military headquarters and requested an immediate conference with General Stone. The implications of her discovery were staggering and would fundamentally change humanity's approach to the war. Within hours, Foster stood before a room full of admirals and generals, explaining what her team had learned from the captured alien technology. The Zephyrians were not just technologically static, they were psychologically incapable of rapid adaptation. Their entire culture was built around the assumption that superior technology guaranteed victory. "Humans are different," Foster concluded. "We treat every defeat as a learning opportunity. Every engagement teaches us something new about our enemies and ourselves. The Zephyrians destroyed the Liberty expecting us to surrender, but instead, we used that attack to learn everything we could about their capabilities." General Stone smiled with the same cold expression she had shown Dr. Price months earlier. "So they're fighting the war they've always fought. While we're fighting the war, we learn to fight by studying them." Foster nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly. They're using the same tactics and technology that worked against 17 other species. We're using tactics and technology specifically designed to counter their advantages." Admiral Parker joined the conference via secure communication, link from his flagship. His fleet had been systematically hunting Zephyrian forces for weeks, destroying enemy ships faster than they could be replaced. The aliens were running out of places to hide. "General, my scouts report that the Zephyrians are consolidating their remaining forces around their home system," Parker said. 1 year after the Liberty Massacre, Emperor Zelthok stood in his throne room and stared at the tactical displays that showed the complete collapse of his empire. Red warning lights flashed across every screen as human forces advanced toward the Zephyrian home system. Conquered worlds that had submitted to his rule decades ago were now openly rebelling, flying human flags and requesting protection from Earth's expanding fleet. The Emperor had lost everything in 12 months of warfare against an enemy he had fatally underestimated. His military had been systematically destroyed, his territories abandoned, his subjects turned against him. Now he faced the final gamble that would determine whether the Zephyrian species survived or joined the 17 civilizations they had eliminated over the centuries. "Your Majesty, the human fleet has arrived," reported General Morthak from his position beside the main tactical display. His voice carried none of its former confidence. The general who had once planned the conquest of dozens of star systems now struggled to defend a single world. Emperor Zelthok looked at the display showing Admiral Parker's forces approaching Zeph Prime. The human fleet was smaller than he had expected. Only 200 ships compared to the 1,000 vessels he had managed to scrape together for this final battle. But size no longer mattered when facing humans. Their weapons had proven capable of destroying anything the Zephyrians could build. "Open a communication channel," the Emperor ordered. "I will speak with their commander." Admiral Grace Thompson appeared on the throne room's main viewer. She was younger than Parker, with short blonde hair and eyes that held the same predatory intelligence all human military officers seemed to possess. Thompson commanded humanity's sole defense fleet, the ships that had been built specifically to protect Earth from exactly this kind of threat. "I am Emperor Zelthok of the Zephyrian Empire," he said, trying to project authority he no longer felt. "I offer you terms for ending this war." Thompson's expression did not change. "Emperor, you had your chance to offer terms a year ago when you murdered the crew of the Liberty. Captain Morrison tried to communicate with your forces peacefully. Your Admiral Kethvar responded by destroying an unarmed exploration vessel." The Emperor felt desperation clawing at his composure. "That was a mistake. Kethvar exceeded his authority. I am prepared to offer reparations, tribute, whatever compensation you require. The time for compensation ended when you declared war. On humanity, Thompson replied coldly. Today we finish what you started. The communication ended, leaving Emperor Zelthok alone with the terrible knowledge that his species' fate was now in the hands of creatures who had never shown mercy to their enemies. Captain Pete Jackson flew his fighter squadron through the opening moments of the battle for Zeph Prime, leading 24 of humanity's most advanced spacecraft against an alien fleet that outnumbered them 50-1. Jackson had been a test pilot before the war, volunteering to fly experimental aircraft that pushed the boundaries of human engineering. Now those experiments were paying dividends in combat. His fighter, the Talon, was equipped with adaptive weapon systems that learned from each engagement and modified their attack patterns accordingly. The technology was so advanced that even Jackson did not fully understand how it worked. He simply pointed his ship at enemy targets and let the computer systems do what human ingenuity had designed them to do. The Zephyrian fleet opened fire, with everything they had, filling space with energy beams and projectiles that should have overwhelmed any attacking force. Jackson watched his tactical display as human defensive systems absorbed, deflected, and countered the alien assault with mechanical precision. Some human ships took damage, but none were destroyed. Then the human fleet returned fire. Commander. Ryan Phillips coordinated Earth's orbital defenses from a command center buried 3 kilometers beneath the surface of Luna. His screens showed the battle raging around Zeph Prime, while simultaneously tracking defensive preparations in the Sol system. Phillips had spent months preparing for the possibility that the Zephyrians might attempt a desperate final strike at Earth itself. The defenses Phillips commanded were unlike anything that had existed during the colony wars. Automated weapon. Platforms hidden throughout the solar system could engage threats at ranges measured in astronomical units. Planetary shields protected every human world from bombardment. Ground-based installations could reach out and touch enemy ships anywhere, within a light hour of their position. Sir, we're detecting Zephyrian infiltration craft attempting to bypass our perimeter sensors, reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Sarah Kim. Phillips smiled with satisfaction. The aliens were trying one last desperate gambit, sending small ships to attack Earth directly, while their main fleet fought Admiral Thompson. It was exactly the sort of predictable tactic that human strategists had anticipated. Activate the inner defense grid, Phillips ordered. Let them come close enough to think they have a chance, then show them what happens when someone threatens our home. The Zephyrian infiltrators never got within 10 million kilometers of Earth. Hidden weapon platforms that had been disguised as asteroids and debris opened fire with weapons that turned the enemy ships into clouds of superheated plasma. The attack was over in seconds, leaving no trace that it had ever been attempted. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Davis stood on the bridge of the destroyer UES Nemesis and watched the final phase of the battle unfold around Zeph Prime. Her ship was part of the human formation that had systematically dismantled the Zephyrian home fleet, turning 1,000 enemy vessels into expanding debris fields that would orbit their star for millions of years. The Nemesis had been built with one purpose: eliminating threats to human civilization with maximum efficiency and minimum risk to human lives. Davis had trained for 3 years to command the ship's advanced weapon systems, learning to think like the adaptive computers that turned her intentions into devastating reality. Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the planetary surface, reported her communications officer. It's Emperor Zelthok. Davis nodded and accepted the transmission. The alien emperor appeared on her screen, his chitinous features showing signs of stress and defeat. Behind him she could see the ruins of what had once been a magnificent throne room. Human commander, I surrender, the emperor said, his voice carrying none of its former authority. My fleet is destroyed. My empire is gone. I offer the complete capitulation of my species in exchange for mercy. Davis looked at the readings from her tactical display. The battle was indeed over. Not a single Zephyrian ship remained intact, and the planet's defenses had been systematically eliminated by human ground forces. Colonel Murphy's special operations teams were already securing key installations across the planet's surface. "Emperor, your surrender is noted," Davis replied. "However, you misunderstand the situation. We are not here to accept your submission. We are here to ensure that your species never again threatens anyone." The Emperor's expression shifted from hope to horror as he realized what Davis was telling him. "You mean to exterminate us?" "No," Davis said calmly. "Extermination would make us like you. Instead, we are going to dismantle your civilization so completely that rebuilding it will be impossible. Your military will be eliminated, your government dissolved, your territory redistributed to the species you conquered. The Zephyrian Empire dies today, but your people will survive as long as they never again threaten others." Admiral Thompson's voice came over the fleet communication system, broadcasting on all frequencies so that every human ship and every surviving alien could hear her words. "This is Admiral Thompson to all forces. The Zephyrian Empire has been defeated. Their military is destroyed, their government has surrendered, and their threat to galactic peace has been eliminated. However, this victory comes with a responsibility. We have proven that humanity will not tolerate aggression against our people or our allies. From this day forward, let it be known throughout the galaxy that any species which threatens human lives will face the same fate as the Zephyrians." Captain Elena Torres led the post-war survey mission that catalogued the remains of Zephyrian space 6 months after the Empire's final defeat. Her ship, the UES Explorer, was an ironic choice for the mission, being an exact sister ship to the Liberty that had started the war. Torres and her crew documented the transformation of 17 conquered star systems as their native species reclaimed their independence. The former Zephyrian territories were barely recognizable. Species that had lived under alien rule for decades were rebuilding their civilizations with enthusiasm that bordered on religious fervor. They viewed humanity as liberators who had freed them from centuries of oppression. Human diplomatic teams worked around the clock to establish trade agreements and mutual defense pacts with the newly independent worlds. Torres stood in the same observation lounge where Captain Morrison had watched alien stars and contemplated first contact with unknown species. Now she looked out at space that was fundamentally safer because of what humanity had accomplished. The lesson was clear to anyone who cared to observe it. Aggression against humans or their allies would be met with overwhelming retaliation. Lieutenant Alex Turner, now bearing the rank of Admiral. 6 months after the Liberty Massacre, Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship and prepared for what he believed would be humanity's final defeat. The Zephyrian High Command had promoted him for his swift victory and given him command of the largest fleet in their empire's history. 500 warships spread across space behind him, enough firepower to reduce entire worlds to ash. The Admiral felt confident as his fleet approached the edge of human space. His intelligence reports showed that Earth's government had made no attempt to negotiate or surrender. Instead, they had remained mysteriously silent for months. Kethvar assumed this meant the humans were paralyzed by fear, unable to comprehend the magnitude of the threat they faced. "Admiral, we're detecting energy signatures ahead," reported his sensor officer. "Multiple contacts at the edge of the Sol system." Kethvar examined the readings with interest. The humans had actually brought ships to meet him, which showed more courage than most species possessed. However, his sensors counted only 150 human vessels, less than a third of his own force. The outcome of this battle was already determined. "Open a communication channel," Kethvar ordered. "Let me speak with whoever commands this pathetic fleet." The main viewer activated to show a human bridge. The man who appeared on screen wore a simple military uniform without decoration or ceremony. His hair was gray, his face weathered, and his eyes held something that made Kethvar momentarily uncomfortable. The human looked like a predator studying its prey. "I am Admiral Chris Parker of the United Earth Navy," the human said in a calm, steady voice. "You must be the alien who murdered the crew of the Liberty." Kethvar recovered his composure quickly. "I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire. I am here to complete the conquest of human space. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick." Parker smiled, and Kethvar felt that strange discomfort again. "Admiral, I want you to remember something. You started this war when you destroyed an unarmed exploration vessel. You chose to murder 2,000 civilians who had never threatened your empire. Now you're about to learn why that was a mistake. The human admiral's image disappeared from the screen. Kethvar stared at the blank viewer for a moment, then shook his head. Human arrogance would not save them from superior firepower and numbers. All ships advance to attack formation, Kethvar commanded. Destroy the human fleet. The Zephyrian armada moved forward with the confidence of a force that had never known defeat. Their massive ships spread across space in perfect attack formation, weapon systems charging for the devastating first strike that had broken so many other species. Captain Sam Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the destroyer UES Vengeance and watched the alien fleet approach. His ship was one of the newest vessels in the human fleet, built with technologies that had been theoretical during the colony wars. The Vengeance looked smaller than the massive Zephyrian ships, but appearances could be deceiving. Captain, we're receiving tactical data from Admiral Parker, reported his communications officer. All ships are to engage at maximum range and maintain formation integrity. Rodriguez nodded and opened a channel to his crew. This is the captain. Today we fight for everyone who died on the Liberty. We fight for every human world these aliens want to conquer. We fight to show them that humanity does not surrender to bullies. The first exchange of fire came when the fleets were still thousands of kilometers apart. Zephyrian energy weapons reached out across space with beams that had shattered the defenses of 17 different species. The aliens expected to see human ships exploding under their overwhelming firepower. Instead, the human vessels seemed to shimmer and shift, their defensive systems absorbing and deflecting energy that should have destroyed them instantly. The few hits that penetrated human shields caused only minor damage, sparks and smoke, but no catastrophic explosions. Then, the humans fired back. Commander Kelly Brooks coordinated the attack from Admiral Parker's flagship. Her tactical display showed every ship in both fleets tracking movements and weapon systems with computer precision. She had spent 20 years studying the recordings from the Liberty's destruction, analyzing Zephyrian tactics and weapons. All ships, fire, Brooks commanded. The human weapons were unlike anything the Zephyrians had seen before. Instead of simple energy beams, the humans launched projectiles that seemed to think for themselves, changing course to track moving targets and adapting their attack patterns in real time. Zephyrian point defense systems, designed to stop conventional missiles, proved useless against weapons that learned from each defensive attempt. The first wave of human fire struck 12 Zephyrian ships simultaneously. The alien vessels simply vanished in brilliant explosions that lit up space for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. The humans had not just destroyed the ships, they had annihilated them so completely that barely any debris remained. Admiral Kethvar stared in shock at his tactical display. 12 of his most powerful warships had been eliminated in seconds by an enemy force he had outnumbered 3-1. The human weapon seemed impossibly advanced, centuries beyond what his intelligence reports had suggested. Return fire, he ordered desperately. All ships, concentrate on their flagship. 200 Zephyrian ships turned their weapons on Admiral Parker's command vessel. Energy beams that could melt asteroids focused on a single target, enough firepower to destroy anything that had ever been built. The human flagship absorbed the attack without visible damage. Its shields flared and sparked but held firm. And seconds later, the ship returned fire with weapons that turned 3 Zephyrian heavy cruisers into expanding clouds of plasma. Rodriguez watched the battle unfold from the bridge of the Vengeance. His tactical officer provided a steady stream of updates as human weapons systematically dismantled the alien fleet. The Zephyrians were fighting desperately now, abandoning their formation to attack individual human ships. But nothing they did seemed to work. Captain, the aliens are trying to withdraw, reported his sensor operator. Several ships are powering up their faster-than-light drives. Rodriguez opened a communication channel to the retreating aliens. His message was simple and delivered in the same calm tone Admiral Parker had used. No. You wanted to fight us. Now you get to finish what you started. Human ships moved to intercept the fleeing Zephyrians. Rodriguez had studied the alien technology, captured from Liberty's wreckage, and he knew exactly how to disable their escape systems. The Vengeance launched a spread of specialized missiles that targeted the enemy drive systems, stranding the alien ships in normal space. The battle continued for another hour, but the outcome had been decided in the first exchange of fire. The Zephyrian fleet was not just losing, it was being methodically destroyed by enemies who fought with cold, calculated precision. Every human attack was perfectly coordinated, every defensive move executed with machine-like efficiency. Admiral Kethavar tried to surrender when half his fleet was gone, but the humans ignored his communications. He tried to negotiate when only 100 of his ships remained, but the human response was more weapons fire. The aliens had shown no mercy to the Liberty's crew, and the humans returned the favor with interest. When only 20 Zephyrian ships remained, Admiral Parker finally responded to their desperate surrender attempts. His image appeared on Kethavar's bridge screen, the same calm expression he had worn at the battle's beginning. "Admiral Kethavar, you asked for our surrender 6 months ago," Parker said. "We declined. Now you ask for mercy after murdering our people. We decline again." The final human attack eliminated 18 of the remaining alien ships. Only 2 Zephyrian vessels survived, both too damaged to fight but still capable of faster-than-light travel. Parker let them go, knowing they would carry news of humanity's victory back to their empire. Commander Brooks joined Parker on the observation deck as they watched the alien survivors limp away. The space around them was filled with debris from 480 Zephyrian ships, the wreckage of what had been the largest fleet in their empire's history. "Sir, should we pursue them?" Brooks asked. Parker shook his head. "Let them go. They have a message to deliver. I want their empire to know what happens when someone threatens humanity. I want them to understand that we don't just defend ourselves, we eliminate threats completely." Rodriguez received new orders as the human fleet reformed. Instead of returning to Earth, they were to proceed deeper into space and begin hunting remaining Zephyrian forces. The aliens had brought war to humanity, and humanity intended to finish it on their own terms. The surviving Zephyrians reached their home territory 3 days later, carrying news that would shake their empire to its foundations. They had not just lost a battle, they had discovered that their supposedly inferior enemies possessed technology and tactics far beyond anything they had imagined possible. Emperor Zelthok received the reports in his throne room, surrounded by advisors who had spent centuries planning conquests that now seemed impossible. The humans had not begged for mercy or tried to negotiate. They had met force with superior force, showing the same ruthless efficiency the Zephyrians had always prided themselves on. For the first time in their species' history, the Zephyrians faced an enemy that seemed to grow stronger with each battle. Lieutenant Alex Turner's damaged pod limped into Luna Station 3 weeks after the Liberty's destruction. The small craft's life support systems had nearly failed twice during the journey, but Turner had survived through sheer determination and careful rationing of his supplies. The station's medical team rushed him to the emergency bay, but Turner insisted on speaking with the base commander immediately. Within hours, Turner's report reached Earth's highest levels of government. The grainy video footage from his pods, external cameras showed the massive alien fleet and the Liberty's final moments. Captain Morrison's last transmission had been automatically recorded by Turner's emergency systems, and now it played in conference rooms across human space. President Maria Gonzalez watched the footage for the 5th time in her private office. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but those who knew her well recognized the steel beneath her gentle appearance. She had led Earth through the colony wars 20 years ago, making decisions that saved billions of lives. Now she faced an even greater threat. The United Earth Assembly gathered in emergency session. Representatives from every human world attended via quantum communication links. The great chamber had never been so quiet as President Gonzalez stepped to the podium. She carried no notes, no prepared speech. She simply looked into the cameras that would broadcast her words across human space. "Citizens of Earth and the colonies," she began, her voice calm and steady. 3 weeks ago, we lost contact with the UES Liberty and her crew of 2,000. Today we learned why. The Liberty encountered an alien force that calls itself the Zephyrian Empire. These aliens demanded our surrender. Captain Morrison refused. The aliens destroyed his ship and murdered his crew. The president paused, letting her words sink in. Across human space, billions of people stopped what they were doing to listen. Children playing in Earth's parks fell silent. Workers in the asteroid mines put down their tools. Farmers on the colony world stood motionless in their fields. The aliens believe they have sent us a message, President Gonzalez continued. They believe they have frightened us into submission. They are wrong. Today I am authorizing Protocol 7. As of this moment, the United Earth government is shifting to a full war footing. Protocol 7 had been created during the colony wars but never fully implemented. It was humanity's emergency response plan, designed to mobilize the entire species for total war. Most people had forgotten it existed, but some remembered. In hidden facilities across the solar system, lights began to flicker on. Dr. Nathan Price sat in his office at the Department of Xenological Studies, reviewing everything humanity knew about alien contact theories. Price was Earth's leading expert on how first contact with hostile aliens might unfold. His books and research papers had explored dozens of scenarios, but none had prepared him for this reality. General Rebecca Stone arrived at Price's office within an hour of the president's speech. Stone was the head of the Department of Strategic Readiness, an organization that most people believed was just another military bureaucracy. In reality, the DSR maintained humanity's true war machine, the weapons and ships that had been built in secret after the colony wars ended. "Doctor, I need to understand these aliens," Stone said as she sat across from Price's desk. "What are we dealing with?" Price pulled up the footage from Turner's pod and froze it on an image of the alien fleet. "Based on their behavior and technology, I believe we're facing a typical galactic empire. They've conquered multiple species through superior firepower and intimidation tactics. They expect other races to surrender when faced with overwhelming force. And when other species don't surrender?" Stone asked. "They eliminate them," Price replied. The Zephyrians told Morrison they had conquered 17 star systems. I doubt any of those civilizations still exist as independent entities. The aliens likely absorbed useful individuals as slaves and eliminated the rest. Stone nodded grimly. "So they're expecting us to beg for mercy or try to negotiate." "Exactly," Price said. "They let Turner live specifically to carry that message back to Earth. They want us to be afraid. They want us to surrender without a fight." Stone smiled, and Price felt a chill run down his spine. He had seen that expression during the colony wars, when Stone had been a young colonel making impossible decisions in desperate battles. It was the smile of someone who enjoyed solving problems through overwhelming violence. "Doctor, these aliens made a critical error in judgment," Stone said. "They don't understand what they're dealing with. They think we're like the other species they've conquered, that will roll over and submit when faced with superior numbers." Price leaned forward in his chair. "But we won't." "No, we won't," Stone agreed. "Humans don't surrender when threatened. We adapt. We evolve. We find ways to turn our enemies' advantages against them. The Zephyrians think they've won a great victory by destroying one exploration ship. They have no idea they've just awakened something that's been sleeping for decades." Across the solar system, hidden facilities began coming online. On the dark side of Mercury, massive shipyards that had been dormant for 20 years started producing warships. In the asteroid belt, automated mining platforms switched from civilian resource extraction to military production. Deep beneath Luna's surface, weapons laboratories activated assembly lines that had been tested but never used. Admiral Chris Parker stood on the observation deck of Facility 7, watching his fleet come to life. The Third Fleet had been humanity's most powerful military force during the colony wars, but it had been mothballed when peace was declared. Now, hundreds of warships emerged from storage bays that had hidden them from routine surveillance for decades. These were not the sleek exploration vessels like the Liberty. The Third Fleet's ships were angular and brutal, designed for one purpose: destroying enemy forces as efficiently as possible. They carried weapons that civilian scientists had never seen, built with technologies that officially did not exist. Parker had been waiting for this moment for 20 years. He had argued against decommissioning humanity's military after the colony wars ended, but the politicians wanted peace. They had compromised by hiding the fleet instead of scrapping it, maintaining the ships in secret while pretending to focus on exploration and colonization. Commander Kelly Brooks joined Parker on the observation deck. She had been his tactical officer during the colony wars and now served as his second in command. Together, they watched maintenance crews swarming over ships that had been perfectly preserved in vacuum storage. "Sir, how long until the fleet is operational?" Brooks asked. 6 months for full deployment," Parker replied. "But we can have the first wave ready in half that time. The Zephyrians are probably planning their invasion fleet right now, expecting to find a terrified humanity begging for mercy." Brooks smiled the same cold smile that General Stone had shown Dr. Price. "They're going to be disappointed." Parker nodded and activated his communication system. "All ship commanders, this is Admiral Parker. Welcome back to active duty. I know many of you thought your fighting days were over. You were wrong. We have a new enemy, one that believes humans are weak because we prefer peace to war. They destroyed the Liberty and murdered 2,000 of our people to prove their point." He paused, looking out at the growing fleet of warships. "We're going to prove them wrong. We're going to show them what happens when someone threatens humanity. We're going to show them why no army has ever survived the human response to aggression." Throughout the solar system, similar scenes played out at dozens of hidden facilities. Weapons that had been theoretical during the colony wars moved into production. Soldiers who had been living quiet civilian lives received activation orders. Scientists who had been working on agricultural projects suddenly found themselves reassigned to military research. The transformation was invisible to most civilians, but those who knew what to look for could see the signs. Shipping patterns changed as resources flowed to previously unknown destinations. Communication networks carried encrypted traffic on frequencies that had been silent for decades. Young men and women began disappearing from universities and technical schools, recruited into programs that did not officially exist. Lieutenant Turner spent his recovery time in debriefings with military intelligence officers. They wanted every detail about the alien ships, their weapons, their tactics, their communication methods. Turner provided everything he could remember, but he kept thinking about Admiral Kethvar's final message. The alien commander had wanted Turner to survive. He had wanted Turner to carry news of humanity's defeat back to Earth. The Zephyrians expected their demonstration of power to terrify the human government into submission. Instead, they had triggered the most massive military mobilization in human history. Turner realized that the aliens had made a fundamental mistake. They judged other species by their own standards, expecting humans to behave like every other race they had conquered. But humans were different. Humans did not surrender when threatened. They got angry, and angry humans were the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy.